A call between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss ending the war in Ukraine is expected to happen very soon. This is days after the first face-to-face talks in 3 years between Russia and Ukraine that took place in Turkey. Now, Trump said on Truth Social that he will call Putin on Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, so that's 10 p.m. here. He also said that after the call, he planned to contact Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. Now, peace talks between Russia and Ukraine took place in Ankara, Turkey last Friday, marking the first time in more than 3 years that delegations from both countries were in the same room. But both sides left the negotiating table without agreeing to a ceasefire. They did, however, agree to swap 1,000 prisoners of war, their biggest such exchange since the war began. Moscow is under pressure to reach a peace deal, with Western leaders' threats of additional sanctions looming. On Sunday, Ukraine says Russia has launched its biggest drone attack since the war began, targeting several regions, including Kiev. Zelensky had met top US officials and European leaders in Rome on the same day, insisting that Ukraine is engaged in real diplomacy to get a ceasefire. Now we bring back our spotlight to the trade war. In a world where trade dynamics are constantly shifting, ASEAN faces a crucial question. Should member countries negotiate tariffs individually with major economies, or is there greater strength in unity? Professor Chandramugan Tangavelu, head of the Jeffrey Cha Institute on Southeast Asia, says there is room for both. Bilateral deals provide flexibility, while ASEAN's multilateral framework ensures collective strength.
So bilaterally you can negotiate, but we still need the multilateral framework. So, for example, under the multilateral framework, let's say we take ASEAN Japan, or ASEAN Korea, and ASEAN China, we have that framework, the bigger framework that unifies and creates this big trading bloc. But the bilaterals are important because in a big trading bloc, China or Japan or Korea under ASEAN Plus framework can need to give to all the members. But China and Japan and Korea might like to give separately to each of the country. So in that case, a bilateral allow us to go deep dive into particular pillars, particular areas that they can push the frontier. And every FTA, including the ASEAN bilateral and the ASEAN Plus framework, go for renegotiation. So now we have renegotiated China into a more deeper and more push the frontier of reform and commitment. And the bilaterals comes into that. It's called the built-in agenda. So fairly, each time a bilateral takes place, and then the bilateral feeds back and create a dynamism in the multilateral framework itself. So both of them feed each other. They are not isolation and they're not mutually exclusive. So when individual countries go and negotiate with Trump, who has abandoned all rule-based, there's no rule. So small country cannot negotiate a larger country because rules protect small countries from being exploited by larger countries. So ASEAN, under its framework, allows each country to negotiate bilaterally, because you can take Cambodia or Vietnam or Thailand, fairly their share of trade maybe around 20 to 30%. So with higher tariff, there is trade diversion. So they need to negotiate to make sure that trade diversion is mitigated to a large extent. For the medium and the long-term growth, is still ASEAN, is still the coalition. It's still what 80% that is built on a rule base.
We have more for you after this break. Don't go anywhere.
This little girl has been through such a tragic experience.
Her little eyes are weeping, she holds her head low. Signs that I've seen out in the wild of young calves that have been abandoned and are on their way out.
Naledi is losing weight and she's becoming skinny and weak.
I don't give her more than 2-3 days.
Watch the incredible true life story of a baby elephant's fight for survival and the determined men who saved her in Naledi, A Baby Elephant's Tale. Monday night on Global Trekker.
Perusahaan kecil dan sederhana, impian besar. Jiwa SME Astro AWANI kembali menjelajah Malaysia. Dari Ipoh ke Kota Kinabalu, dari Melaka ke Lembah Kelang. Sesi pitching, pameran produk dan dialog bersama pemimpin industri serantau. Dapatkan inspirasi, ilmu dan peluang untuk kembangkan perniagaan anda semuanya di bawah satu bumbung. Kerana inilah medan impak sebenar. Jiwa SME menjana impak, inovasi digital.
Welcome back. Britain has agreed to the most significant reset of defence and trade ties with the European Union in a landmark summit that aims to reset ties with the bloc. The meeting symbolises a fresh start, moving past the tensions that followed Britain's departure from the EU in January 2020. The government said the reset with its biggest trading partner consists of wide-ranging agreements with the bloc covering deals on food, fishing, passport checks and more. It says the long queues at border control will end for UK travellers, but more details have yet to be announced. A 12-year agreement also grants EU boats access to UK waters in exchange for reduced food export checks to the EU. At the heart of the reset is a Defence and Security Pact that paves the way for the UK to access to a €150 billion fund that could provide loans for defence projects. The UK and EU also agreed to hold regular summits every year. Now the talk comes as both the EU and Britain face security concerns over Russia and uncertainty about US support under President Donald Trump. The reset follows Trump's disruption of global trade through reciprocal tariffs, prompting governments worldwide to reassess trade, defence and security ties, drawing Starmer closer to European leaders. Over in China, factory output slowed in April but showed unexpected resilience, the National Bureau of Statistics reported on Monday. NBS spokesperson Fu Linghui highlights that China's foreign trade withstood difficulties, maintaining steady growth and showcasing international competitiveness. Industrial output grew 6.1% year-on-year in April, down from 7.7% in March, but beating a Reuters poll forecast of 5.5%. While retail sales rose 5.1% below March's 5.9% and short of the expected 5.5%. Despite headwinds, China's economy expanded 5.4% in Q1, surpassing expectations. Chinese authorities remain confident in hitting a 5% growth target for 2025, even as economies warn of tariff-driven risks. This also suggests that government support measures may have helped cushion the impacts of the US-China trade war that threatens to derail momentum in the world's second-largest economy. Last month, Beijing and Washington escalated tariffs to over 100% in several rounds of retaliatory moves. But they recently agreed to lower tariffs, offering a 90-day truce. But US President Donald Trump's unpredictable stance continues to loom over China's export-driven economy, which still faces 30% tariffs. The government pledges a 1 billion ringgit financial lifeline to support small and medium-sized enterprises against the impact of US tariffs. While the details are still being finalized as of this moment, we asked Dato' William Ng from SME Association Samantha for his take on the best way forward to ensure effective and targeted distribution of funds.
We welcome the Prime Minister's announcement of the $1 billion financial assistance. I think it is timely and shows that the government recognizes the importance of SMEs as the backbone of our economy. I think the details are being finalized, but what we expect are that the distribution will follow a targeted and, of course, a planned model. partially direct grants, partly low-interest loans, and partly guarantees through agencies like SME Corp, Matrade, MIDF, and CGC. To ensure that the funds go to the most affected businesses, we really should prioritize companies with a high percentage of exports to the US market, industries that are directly impacted by tariff-related disruption, maybe SMEs that employ large numbers, especially in rural or semi-urban areas, as well as, most importantly, companies that are willing to pivot or adopt to digitalization and green transformation. But the key really is in transparency and speed, because that is crucial. Many SMEs cannot wait 6 to 12 months for disbursement. They need the bridging assistance now and today.
William also highlighted the challenges SMEs face, not only due to US tariffs on Malaysia, but also from their impact on China.
The impact of the US tariffs on Malaysian SMEs will really depend on the nature and scope of the tariffs. But any trade restrictions by the United States, which is of course our third largest trade partner, will definitely have an impact on our economy. SMEs in the E&E sector, which of course makes up 39% of exports to the US, are particularly vulnerable. Even if our firms are not directly hit, many of us are part of the regional supply chain for the Chinese and Taiwanese components. So any disruption upstream affect all of us as well. Other sectors likely to feel the pinch include furniture, rubber products, and palm oil derivatives, where SMEs make up the bulk of the exporters. For example, furniture makers in Penang and Muar are already telling us they are already seeing reduced demand and pressure to reduce price. That said, I think it is not all negative. Some Malaysian SMEs may benefit from the trade diversion, especially those who are able to quickly pivot or scale up production to replace supply gaps caused by the tariffs on China and other markets with higher tariffs than our own. But this window is small and competitive, so the ability to adapt swiftly is the key.
In a major breakthrough, the US and China agreed to lower tariffs for 90 days, easing global trade tensions. How can Malaysian SMEs leverage this small window of stability? Here's what Samantha's Dato' William Ng has to say.
Of course, a more stable global trade environment is always good news for us and for the SMEs in particular. What it means is that, of course, it's better predictability and a more stable demand for our exports. But Malaysian SMEs must also be proactive to really capitalize on these developments. So we must pay attention as much as we can to what is happening around us. Firstly, diversification is key. Too many SMEs are still overly reliant on a single market. Now I think it's a time to explore markets like ASEP and CPTPP, particularly in ASEAN, Japan, and Australia. Secondly, we must move up the value chain. Instead of competing on price, we must compete on design, on quality, on sustainability, and of course on speed. This means investing in automation, in our branding, and of course in our digital trade platforms. Thirdly, Malaysian SMEs should embrace supply chain resilience. That means building multi-country sourcing and strategic stockpiling to withstand all these future shocks. Never mind the current one, but more will come, and we must be ready for it. Finally, and we urge the government to expedite support for trade facilitation to help us reduce the cost of logistics, and of course to ensure that SMEs are prepared through export readiness program and whatnot. This is especially so for smaller SMEs that have never exported before. In summary, while we cannot control the global geopolitics, we can definitely control how ready we are for them.
That wraps up AWANI International. Stay tuned for reports on the rivalries, strategies and the shifts behind the power affairs driving the new global order. Visit international.astroawani.com for more and be sure to follow our social media accounts, Power Affairs. That is all for now. I'm Farhana Sheikh. Thank you and good night.